Alex, welcome.
Appreciate it, man. It's good to be here.
Yeah, great to be here. I know for those of you that have watched the channel before, we do a lot of tactics. This will be no different, but I think talking about something we don't cover often as much, which is the stress of tech sales, probably one of the most stressful careers. Alex, obviously you started Alluviant. You work a lot with reps. I'm oversimplifying here on their inner game, but I think today's going to be a real deep dive of something I don't see a lot of people talking about in terms of candidly the stress, what that is, how that manifests, especially over the course of 3, 5, 7, 10 years in the industry, and then also how to deal with that as well. So Alex, I can kick it over to you maybe as an intro and we'll get it going from there.
Yeah, brother. So I was in tech sales for about 15 years or so. So I worked at companies like DocuSign. I was at Microsoft for 5 years. Joined Outreach as a very early stage company, grew it out quite a bit. And then most recently was a head of sales at a company called Catalyst. So let's just say I know the emotional journey when it comes to sales and leadership. And in addition to that, over the past 12, 13 years, I've been really committed to inner work. I've probably at this point attended over 100 retreats. I've worked with a lot of coaches, teachers, mentors, things along those lines. And what I've always loved is a commitment to the craft, right? How do you sell more effectively, right? How do you get the ability to influence other people to buy your product or to buy into your vision, whatever it might be? But also, how do you complement that with purpose, with fulfillment, with safety, with joy? And also, how do you overcome, just like you said, this wonderful burnout and the stress that so many people feel? And for me, really personally, this came from back around 2016, 2017 timeframe. I was actually at Microsoft. I was an account executive there. And for the third year in a row, I was either number one on my team or fighting for that number one spot. And I was living in San Francisco. I was working with Silicon Valley customers. And you would have said, outside looking in, Alex, you're crushing it. I was making more money than I ever had. Like, life was really, really good. However, underneath that, I developed like this really weird tick where, like, underneath my breath when I was in the office in downtown San Francisco, I used to say to myself, man, what if people actually knew that I hated my life? And it was weird because, like, I was really taught from a young age from my father that when somebody was asking you, how are you doing? You say, I'm always great.
Yeah.
Right? Because it was a certain way of, like, if you say that, it causes you to put a big smile on your face. They feel better, and you kind of brainwash yourself into thinking you're doing great. The problem is, if you're not, you're actually pushing down these emotions of anger, sadness, fear, whatever it might be, and you put on this big smile, right? And especially when you speak with prospects, what do we have to do? Hey, Mr. and Mrs. Prospect, how are you? All is always great on my end. And when you're not actually feeling that inside, you're putting on this mask, right? And then you're actually out of rapport, out of integrity with yourself. That's what causes the burnout, the exhaustion. Even when you're getting a lot of sleep, even when you're exercising, even when you're eating right, you're like, why am I still so tired? Because you're wearing this armor and this mask. And for me, around that time frame in 2016, 2017, I think I was at like 130% of my number, making more money, but I hit this level of depression that I'd never hit before. And it got to the point where actually I couldn't get out of bed. And it was kind of like out of one of those movies. The shades in my apartment were closed shut. There was trash everywhere. My beard was overgrown. And I was like, damn, like something's actually wrong here. And, you know, serendipitously at that time, I got a LinkedIn message from a guy who said something along the lines of, do you think you're living your life the way that you should? And I was like, I will take that call. What's going on? And we had a really powerful conversation. He ended up actually inviting me to my very first retreat. And it was for people who wanted to actualize their vision, but also do so in the right way. And what I learned there was really the importance of feeling your emotions. Another way of saying it is just like self-connection. And it brought me down this whole journey of meditation and breath work and visualization, things that essentially move you from being out of this beautiful dome of yours, thinking about the thoughts that you're thinking about, into the somatic intelligence of your body, feeling your gut, feeling your heart. And what's funny is as I've gone on that journey around 2019, 2020 timeframe when I was leading a sales team at Outreach, I felt like I was tech sales guy by day, spiritual, curious guy by night. And I chose to actually start to bridge those two things. And I actually started doing Wim Hof breath work with my team at the very beginning of each team meeting. And it was different. It was unique. It was weird. Let's just say there was some pushback by people at the beginning, but it started to catch on. And we started to talk about the importance of the inner game of sales. And what just so happened was not only did we have a great culture, but we were continuously fighting for the number one spot. And I really started to say, okay, there's something to be said here of, yes, the tactics and the strategies are important. Like, learn that, master that, your process, your language, how you get a prospect into a state of commitment. And there's not that underlying foundation that's built upon mental health, emotional health, even spiritual health. Like, I don't care how good your cold call script is, it's going to fall flat if you're not coming from the right place. Yep. And that's what's really taking me on a journey to really doing what I'm doing now with Illuvians and so many more things.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. And I definitely resonate with this. I think it's some of the reason we connected as well. I think different shades for me, but in college I made Team USA. That was a big thing where I built my identity around. I have a lot of excitement. My life is progressing, again, on the outside looking in. And then you realize there's still a lot of things you have to deal with. A lot of problems compound. Just because you're one way or the other, maybe you're making a lot of money or you're in a great position, it doesn't mean everything is going to take care of itself. Maybe, because I think this is a unique conversation I don't see a lot of people having. And to that person who's early on in their career or maybe experiencing shades of burnout, just take me back to that time in San Francisco in Microsoft. How did that kind of come to fruition over the course of, you tell me, months, years? What did that actually feel like? And then when did you reach that point where it's like, okay, something has to change?
Yeah. It was really a culmination of my entire life, to be honest. I mean, I think you said it really well, is my identity was placed in, I need to achieve, I need to make a lot of money, I need to work at a really sexy and cool company, have that great logo, and my worth is tied to my performance, right? This is why you see so many people, when they have a great quarter, they're elated. And then if they have a shit quarter, they go down a deep spiral. And it's also a reason why when you see somebody perform, they're maybe happy for about 15 minutes. Yeah. And then they get to the next quarter and they start at zero and they're like, oh God, I have to do it all over again. Yeah. And so this was just, we're conditioned to go to a good college, to get a good job, and so on and so on. And so it really built up over many years for me. I'd say the big changing point was when, essentially when I couldn't get out of bed, and my sister, Holly, my oldest sister, she's like, hey dog, you need some help. Yeah. And she actually sent me a book called The Way of the Peaceful Warrior, which really taught me kind of my first step in that path. And then I went to that very first retreat, and it was actually on that retreat, I went up to this guy, his name was Michael, and he was one of the leaders, and he's this guru-esque looking guy, kind of got the man bun, the goatee, the kind of guy, when he looks at you, you're like, I feel naked. This guy can see into my soul, sort of thing. And I went up to Michael and I was like, hey brother, I gotta share, I'm performing externally so well, but I'm depressed. I'm having suicidal thoughts. I broke up with my ex-girlfriend 3 years ago and I still am struggling with it. What's going on here? How do I fix this? It was more of me venting to him than anything, just help. And what he said to me was a thing that I was not expecting. He said, awesome, Alex, thank you for sharing. He's like, so where in your body do you feel this? And I was like, that was not the question I was expecting you to ask me right there. But I was like, I kind of closed my eyes and I felt it. And I was like, well, I guess I feel it in my lower chest, kind of near my sternum. He's like, cool. What does it feel like? And I was like, it feels hard. It feels kind of even smoky, but hard. He's like, cool. What color is it? And I was like, it's black. He's like, cool. He's like, what I want you to do for the rest of the retreat, it was actually a retreat in Guatemala. He's like, what I want you to do for the rest of the time is I want you to simply breathe into that area and out through that area, in and out, through the entire time, whether you're eating lunch, whether you're listening to sessions, whether you're talking to someone, whether you're taking a shit, breathe in and out of that area. And I did. And what happened is this feeling that was it was so caught up, so tight, that my breath started to loosen it. Right? And it started to actually bring awareness to it and actually move it. Because you see, these emotions that we have, we bury them so deeply And what really needs to happen is for us to simply feel them, and it actually starts to liberate from us. Yeah. That's why sometimes crying is actually a really good thing, like a cathartic cry. Yeah. Like sometimes when I'm really angry, I get a towel and I put it over my mouth, and actually I hold my throat so my vocal cords don't shake too much, and I scream into the damn towel because I need to feel it. Yeah. And it moves it off you, and you actually feel lighter. Yeah. And you can relax into it. And what comes out from underneath that is, you can call it your light, you can call it your essence, you can call it your authentic state, but underneath all these parts of you is your authentic expression. And there's been studies done that said that authenticity is literally the strongest wavelength that carries off of you, right? We've all been at a party, a bar, a restaurant where you see someone walk in who's fully in their essence, fully authentic, and you're like, damn, I don't know who that is, but they're attractive, right? There's like that magnetic pull that they have to them, right? You want to speak to them. And that comes from them actually being connected to themselves, knowing themselves, self-awareness, right? And that's really where, I always encourage people of like, cool, step number one, are you actually creating a space where you can have a level of self-connection, self-awareness, or simply self-discovery? And that can come in through meditation or breath work or journaling or going on a walk without your phone, like something that stops you from distracting yourself with social media, with work, or even a substance. Yep. Feel it.
Yeah.
And oftentimes that's the trailhead. That's the gateway to so much more.
100%. I'd love to probe into this too. I definitely resonate with all of this in terms of, I think this is a tough one. I think the simplest way to say it is it's kind of like the frog, getting boiled, where it's like you think things are fine and all of a sudden you're in a situation you feel trapped. And then also I think how it parlays into your personal and professional life is you start acting more erratically. Maybe in your case where you mentioned it's difficult to get out of bed, some people maybe act over emotionally, overreact to people close to them. There's all sorts of symptoms. Mm-hmm. Maybe just getting into some of the causes, again, I know you work with tons of people, tons of sales reps in terms of dealing with a lot of these challenges. What are some of the more common ones that you see that are some of the biggest causes for getting to this state of being, maybe it's depressed, maybe it's just really not in a good headspace?
Yeah, I would say, number one, there's this belief that they're not good enough. And so what they do to compensate for that, they grind, right? I'm going to wake up early. I'm going to do a ton of sales calls, cold calls, work super hard until the end of the day, and then repeat, and then repeat. And there's this feeling, it's like the grind, it's not being sourced from, oh man, I feel purpose and I want to get to more prospects. I want to make a lot of money so I can provide for my family. It's actually sourcing from this void. This like, I actually don't think that I'm good enough. And if I don't do this, then everybody's going to realize that I'm not good enough if I don't hit my number, right? So it's like the grind is such a key one. I think the second one that I kind of referenced earlier is people put on this mask, right? I'm supposed to say, I'm always great. And a lot of times people try to fit into the uniform versus the uniform fitting onto them, right? Oh, an account executive, for example, they're supposed to look a certain type of way. They're supposed to have all of the answers. They're supposed to know exactly what they're talking about. And they try to fit in that world. Heaven forbid somebody actually finds out who they really are. Yeah. And this is such a key thing. And I'm really seeing like the big shift from the top reps at companies that we work with, from Salesforce to Gong, Gartner, and stuff like that. The top reps are the ones who are starting to actually be themselves. Be weird, be different, be unique. And that's actually attractive. Like prospects like that. Because, we were talking about this before the podcast. It's so easy for people to say, cool, oh, okay, I'm speaking to this persona. Here's their company. Here's our value prop. ChatGPT, how do I sell my product to them?
Yeah.
Perfect script, right? And there's actually data that says that of your influence ability, 7% of your influence comes from the words that you say, right? The script, your product details, all that sort of stuff, which is actually where most sales training comes in, right? But then that means that there's 93% of your influence that comes from something other than your words. Of that, 38% is your tonality. right? If you ever read the book Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss, he talks about the late night DJ voice. Right? Are you speaking slowly and from a lower tonality? Actually, are you speaking from your gut? Or are you speaking from your chest, your neck, or your nose? And are you talking really, really fast because I don't want people to actually know what I'm not talking about? Right? You lose trust. So can you actually speak lower? And then 55% of it comes from your energy, right? And your energy sometimes comes from your body posture. That comes from the frequency from what you're coming from. That comes from your purpose, your level of aliveness, right? So that's really like a key thing that's impacting whether or not people say, I trust this person. I want to give this person my money. I want this person to help us solve our business issues. And that's really the gap that I see. So many people wear this mask and say, as long as I master the words and know my product, I will make it work. And that's 7% of the equation.
Yeah. 100%. No, that's great perspective. I'd love to, because I think part of this as well, like I mentioned, when I started playing for Team USA, I really started to see the performance side of things from a mental perspective, and I think it's very important. That being said, I think, I look at my background, conservative, Midwest upbringing, thankful for it, wouldn't change anything. But that being said, things like breath work, meditation, yoga, I'm just projecting at this point. I'm not sure what all it entails, but some of that is naturally met with resistance of mysticism, woo,
yeah.
like all that stuff. So open-ended question, but I'd love to, one, have you met people that have a natural resistance to that? What is your stance on that? I don't know how to ask the question I'm trying to ask, but I think you get where I'm going.
It's funny. Absolutely, I've met people who have a resistance to it. And it's funny, I mentioned this earlier, but when I started bringing Wim Hof into my team, there was this one rep on my team. Her name was Laura. She was actually one of our top reps. And I was like, all right, guys, we're going to do something different. We're going to do Wim Hof. And, if you've ever seen Wim Hof, it's like you're breathing in through your mouth, you're moving your body. It's kind of a vulnerable thing to do, especially in front of other people. And she was like, are you kidding me, Alex? And I enrolled her and she did it. And, we did it for about 3 weeks or so. And I remember the fourth week in a row, I came in and I had a busy day and I was like, all right, guys, we have a lot to get through in this team meeting. We don't have time for breath work. And Laura, she puts her hand on my shoulder. She's like, Alex, this is probably when we need it the most. Okay. And I was like, whoa. Right? So it's one of those things that yes, there's a resistance to it because it's new and it's different. Breathing? Come on, dog. I need to hit my quota. How is breathing actually going to help me? But when you actually breathe, it actually calms your nervous system. It brings you down. That's why even before we did this podcast, I said, hey, do you want to just drop into 3 rounds of box breath here? Because I was like, all right, I'm thinking about the thoughts that I'm thinking about. Okay, how am I going to say the right thing? And it's like, man, your intelligence, so much of it actually comes from your body. Can you feel me? Yeah. And, what I've always found is that for the people who really feel a resistance to the breath work or the meditation, whatever it may be, I feel that and I have compassion for them. And sometimes it's a resistance to go in deep to themselves. Yeah. Because when I start to feel the stuff, I don't know what that is. Right? I'm supposed to feel my anger that I so often try to distract myself with. Right? You want me to feel my sadness? I don't want to feel sad. That's going to bring me down. That's going to hurt my productivity. Right? And so it's this blend of actually your emotions, when you can alchemize them, it actually makes your field bigger, right? It actually makes you say I know myself and I trust myself. And when you trust yourself more, other people naturally trust you as well. So do people feel resistance? Absolutely. And it's one of those things that's start small. Yeah. Right. And then I feel pretty confident after seeing so many reps go through this that soon they're like, oh, this actually becomes my competitive edge.
Yeah, 100%. And I would add too, I think oftentimes using yoga as one example of many, and again, whether you choose to do yoga or not, totally up to you. It's not my place to say. But I can even think back to my experience when I started doing it when I was about 22, 23 maybe. Even just physically. It's maybe you're not in that position where you want to go deeper mentally yet or address some things if they're out there that are lingering. I think there's such a benefit from just the physical perspective of doing these different exercises as a starting point. To your point, we all see yoga, and if you've never done it, it's like woo woo, or all of these different things. But even just if you're trying to feel better, like I significantly feel better now that I do yoga. I almost feel better now in my 30s than I did when I was in my 20s prior to doing yoga, because of just the preventative maintenance I'm doing physically. I'd love to tap into as well. You're talking about starting small, which I totally agree with. If this is like a lot to someone, maybe just getting tactical or actually giving something digestible as we're talking. What are maybe 1 or 2 or 3 things that if I'm a rep right now, I do feel like I'm in that place? Like, where do I even start? What is something simple, 1 or 2 things I could even implement following the episode?
Yeah. You know, it's funny. So we throw retreats, right? And we have hundreds of sales professionals, leaders, and founders come to our retreats to talk about the craft and the inner game. And there's always a component of our retreats where you say, all right, there's an opportunity to make a commitment here, a commitment. And when you make a commitment to do something when you leave the retreat and you say it in front of sometimes 50 people, that's a level of accountability. You're putting yourself out there. And there's this one guy who we've worked for about 2 years. He's at a company called Verkada. He just got promoted to an enterprise account executive. He's actually the youngest account executive there.
Wow.
And he's crushing his numbers. He's going to make a ton of money, and he's also just like, he's feeling really, really good. 2 years ago, after his very first immersion, you want to know what his number one commitment was? Making his bed in the morning. He's like, man, I wake up and then I need to go to my first call. And then I'm just scrambling through my first call, whether it's call the manager or prospect or making cold calls. Like, there was never a time to actually stop and connect with himself first before he actually started his day. And so he made one small commitment. I'm going to make my bed every single day. And actually, we have a Slack group, and he would take a picture of his made bed and he'd put it in the Slack group every single morning as like a way to hold himself accountable. And what's really beautiful is about 2 months later, he came to our second retreat. And he's like, hey man, I've been loving this. He's like, I'm brewing on what's my next commitment. And he personally committed to meditating every single day for 365 days in a row. And he's like, I'm not making a statement of how long it's going to be, right? But I'm just going to say, whether it's 60 seconds or 20 minutes, I got my Headspace app, and I'm going to make sure that that number starts increasing in consecutive days. And that then quickly led to him doing yoga every single day, right? So it's almost like, it's like, what's the first domino that, like, make your bed every single day, start your day with a productive note, and know that no matter what happens during the day, you can go home to a made bed, right? Start with some sort of self-connection practice, whether that be meditation, whether that be a gratitude journal, whether that be going on a walk with your dog so you can literally feel the sun on your face, and try to do it without listening to something. So you're like, oh, look at the leaves, right? Like, actually, again, you want to bring awareness versus just trying to distract yourself. You know, one thing that I do every single day as well is I do breath work within myself. Like, I do 3 rounds of Wim Hof. Again, it's a way to drop myself in. It's just like, have a morning practice that requires you to connect to yourself. Because if you are connected to yourself, that then gives you the ability to connect to other people. Yep. But if you aren't connected, I'm just going to be like, coming after you, Mr. Prospect, and just, I'm trying to manipulate you to buy my product, where it's like, I actually need to connect with you first.
Yeah. No, it's tons of great nuggets here, I might add. And maybe as 1 or 2 questions in closing, in terms of, I think this is great, and I also want to be wary that we don't want to jump right to the solution as well. I think one of these things is, like, I've definitely experienced a lot of ups and downs, both in sales, in life, et cetera. Maybe for someone that's younger in their career, and or, you know, things have been going well, just staying out in front of this as well before it gets to a point where you are in a very difficult spot. What are ways that you've seen that help proactively? Maybe, you know, life's good. I don't really feel the need to do breath work or meditation or yoga. And obviously there's a time and place. Maybe you would still encourage them to do that. But are there other things to cultivate awareness, to just be aware and make sure you're not getting to that place where it's really, really deep and in some cases can be difficult to get out of?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the first thing I'd say is life is a journey, and it's a roller coaster of a ride. And sometimes it feels like I got ups and I got downs, and I got ups and I got downs. The relationship you have to the downs is really important, because sometimes when we start to get down on ourselves, we get burnt out. It's like, oh God, I'm back here. God, I hate myself whenever I do this, whatever it might be. But also recognizing that sometimes those downs are actually the acceleration to go back up, right? 50 Cent said this extremely well. The joy wouldn't feel so good if it wasn't for the pain, right? And actually just allowing yourself to experience sometimes the heaviness, because that causes you to go into what I like to call energy poor. And when you're in energy poor, you're like, man, I'm gonna make a change. I wanna fix this. Like, honor that space, because that actually is gonna catalyze you into what's the next stage I'm going into. I'll also say that there's two things that I found that every rep leader, human being, generally wants. Number one, they want community. And number two, they want meaning. And so if I could recommend one thing to do, it's number one, find yourself an incredible community. But it's such a commonly used word today. So community to me is a group of people who specifically are working towards something bigger and stronger together. And really at its core, there's this feeling of belonging, right? Because actually belonging, studies have shown it actually activates your prefrontal cortex, which makes you go into a greater sense of flow and purpose. And if somebody's struggling in your community, obviously you have each other's back. But what I actually think is the most important thing, there's a freaking standard. Yeah. There's a level of accountability. There's a, hey, I'm gonna say there's a love, Eric, step up, dog. I think your vision could be bigger. I think you could go for it more. But your community, they don't necessarily say that through their words. They say that through their own actions. They're going for it. They're putting themselves out there more. And that's simply your crew. And you're like, damn, what am I doing? Yeah. Right? It calls you forward, right? So that's the first thing. As far as the meaning piece, have a vision. Figure out how to gain a sense of clarity in terms of what you want to do. And if you don't have a vision right now, that's still a vision. No vision is still a vision. And if you want to figure out what your North Star is, make your North Star figuring out your damn North Star, right? Feel a level of aliveness around not what are you doing, but who are you trying to be, right? If you think of, let's say 3 years down the road, let's say you're a top rep or you're a founder, let's say you're in a great relationship, let's say you're making a shit ton of money. The question is not necessarily what are you doing? The question is specifically, what's that version of you like? What time do they wake up in the morning? Who do they surround themselves with? What skill sets do they have, right? What do they put in their body? Do they work out? And really start to say, cool, where am I already in integrity with that version of me? And where am I not? And what new commitments do I need to make to get there? And I'll finish off with this, and this is one of my favorite quotes that I don't know who I heard this from, but I think about it almost every single day. The purpose of a vision, it's not necessarily that you achieve it. The purpose of your vision, it's actually who it causes you to be today. That's so key about it. And so really find yourself in a group of people who are going to support you, hold you accountable, really push you maybe a little bit beyond what you'd expect yourself to do, and gain clarity in terms of the direction you want to move to, and feel an aliveness and excitement of that, and let that come through in your tonality. Let that come through in your energy. Let that come through in your words.
Yeah. Well, deep podcast, man. I even managed to throw in a 50 Cent quote, man. I love it. But no, this is great, man. And I think hopefully a great introduction to that side of the house. I think that often is not discussed a lot. And also I'll throw your LinkedIn in the description as well if anyone wants to connect with Alex, learn more about it. But yeah, this is great, man. I really appreciate it. And I think it's something that isn't talked about all that much. So yeah, hope everyone got a lot out of it. And yeah, we'll see you on the next one.
Much love. Thank you.